What things, because my intention is to give you some guidance to pull you out of these things with this episode. What things do you get into in terms of thoughts that are self-destructive patterns? And mainly, let's go back to worry and unhappiness and anger. And let's add one more, fear. So look at that for a moment. And do you spend your life in fear? Do you spend your life worrying? Do you spend your life in unhappiness? Do you spend your life in anger? One caveat, and there's kind of a loop here that I really don't want to take a lot of time going into this episode. I do want to separate here that some people can be unhappy because they have, let's say, for example, what would be called clinical depression, which is a chemical imbalance to some degree in the brain or chemicals in the brain. But what I also want to point out is that many years, and so people will say, well, I can't be happy because I have, I'm clinically depressed. I'm on medication and the psychologist said so. I get that. I understand that. Yes, it is real. What I want to point out is I also understand it firsthand experience. After college, I had what would be diagnosed most likely as clinical depression coupled with panic and anxiety attacks. Oh boy, you want to talk about a mess. I mean, I was literally between, and I never really contemplated suicide. I mean, I would be too chicken to do that, and it's not why I came to the planet, to leave the planet on my own volition in that kind of way. But I can't say that I really enjoyed living life at all. It was that bad. And my days were humdrum, and I would drag through my days. And then on top of that, I had panic attacks on top of that. And I had anxiety attacks on top of that. And then I would have anxiety attacks about having panic attacks. I mean, it was a meltdown. I wasn't a hot mess. I mean, I was a volcano. That hot, and when it comes to a hot mess. And this was 1988. I lived on the beach on South Padre Island, Texas, which is pretty much where I grew up, South Texas, near Mexico. I managed a t-shirt shop, and I really didn't have a lot of money. I didn't make that much. And I was trapped in life because I had no money to get out of the cycle that I was in at that point because I didn't know all the things that I'm sharing with you on this podcast. And it took me about a year to get out of that air quote depression. Now, what I'm sharing with you is I had it bad. I mean, I really had bad depression. Now, I tell you that because some of you might be experiencing that. And I didn't have drugs. I didn't have a psychologist. I didn't have a psychiatrist. I didn't go to a doctor because I couldn't afford it and I didn't have health insurance. And I came out of the depression in maybe 8, 9, 10 months, maybe a year. I don't remember. And what I've recognized in my maturing and in my age over the years is that this is going to be controversial to some people. But when we're experiencing something like that, and we can say, well, Jim, it's chemical reaction in the brain, there is something creating that subconsciously. Think about that. There's something creating that subconsciously. And when we come to explore ourselves and know ourselves, which is where I'm going in this episode, when we come to explore ourselves and know ourselves, that's when we have power and influence over things that happen like addictions, which we don't know how to air quote control or stop. And they go on for many people for years.